Crossing the tranquil waters from Kororareka Russell to the treaty grounds, I thought of all the times I'd gone back and forth to Waitangi, witnessing frustration, pain, solidarity too. I first came to Waitangi in 1984 for the historical hikoi. Went back again in 1990 when the Queen was given a talking to.
You have not honoured the treaty.
The treaty has been imperfectly observed.
Remember this? 8 years ago. So what about 2024, given real concerns that Te Tiriti and gains made over the past 30 years appear under threat?
Now, I got the feeling that a lot of our people are feeling really pissed off about it.
When I first read the coalition agreements, first of all, I was stunned. And then I thought, oh my gosh, the people need to know what this is. And then I thought, actually, this is a very good way of bringing our people together, because we will be able to see very clearly that this is a direct attack on Māori.
Māori would certainly welcome a debate, but a well-informed debate, not sort of like, okay, this is what we're going to do. You can come and make submissions to a select committee.
At Auckland Airport this morning, aeroplanes will have landed and New Zealanders will be starting their journey as part of Aotearoa, and we should acknowledge both of them and everyone in between. Tiro rangatiratanga for all.
Tino rangatiratanga for all. ACT leader David Seymour wants a referendum over the principles of the treaty. And that's like a red rag to a bull.
To strip the treaty of its mana, to belittle the reo by trying to make it a second-class language in our land, it ain't gonna happen.
The phrase like tino rangatiratanga has kind of been twisted by some political advocates in terms of your individual rights, isn't it? It must be triggering for you.
Absolutely, because my kaumātua at home were so clear about what it's about. The word rangatira is made up of ranga and tira. And ranga it's a shoal of fish, but raranga is also to weave. And then a tira is a group of people. And the job of a rangatira is to weave the people together. And rangatiratanga is being able to keep the people woven together. And it's that exercise of that mana and the exercise of manaakitanga, it's whakapapa, it's whanaungatanga, using all of those values to keep the people together.
Prime Minister, this is a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day to have the discussions. It's a beautiful day to have the robust debate.
Kei a koutou ngā pau kōrero I pūmawana tō tātou nei tiriti. I pūmawana te ātāhuatanga o tō tātou nei whenua rangatira. Mō te aha, mō te ao katoa, Māori me Pākehā. Kāwanatanga me ngā whakaminenga. Aroha, aroha, aroha.
This year was marked by a generous desire to engage, unpick and understand what's driving the combative and divisive political messaging. Deputy Prime Minister and New Zealand First Leader Winston Peters came out fighting.
Let me tell you, sunshine, I used to go to the marae where they had a thing called tikanga and protocol and respect and not you shouting. See what I mean?
Unity doesn't mean all of us being or thinking exactly the same. We can value our differences. We can debate them constructively while respecting each other and still find a pathway towards a better future together.
There's always been high drama at Waitangi, but not quite like this. And that's because the call for a public debate around the meaning of Te Tiriti and its principles is framed around ACT's interpretation.
50 years ago, Ngā Tamatoa was marching for the treaty, marching for the reo. And here we are in 2024, current government's about to downgrade both of them. Leave the treaty alone, leave the reo alone. Build on those things, which are solid foundations for the whole country, for business, for the nation and for international tourism and our image overseas.
The principles were developed by the Labor government in 1989. They're not perfect, but they've actually served our nation quite well over the last 30 years. But what I think Mr. Seymour's seeking to do is to just throw the treaty in the bin and rewrite it the way he wants it written.
The leaked proposed principles of the Treaty of Waitangi Bill, they have deliberately taken phrases out of Te Tiriti or Waitangi and literally mistranslated them to try and, form some sort of a gloss that hides the true meaning of those words.
David Seymour's comments were drowned out by song. That's tikanga.
I got news for you. There's people up and down the country watching you, and they're asking, why do those people have a right to stop the rest of New Zealand debating its own future?
How are you feeling about how this year is shaping up?
I'm very encouraged by what I have seen, starting with what happened at Tūrangawaewae, backed up by Ratana, and then what I saw at Waitangi gave me huge hope for this country, because I saw not just our people up there being very, very clear about our understanding and our determination to honour, uphold and implement He Hakaputanga and Te Tiriti, but it was the number of tauiwi who came with the same understanding and who wanted to see a country that is based on He Hakaputanga and Te Tiriti. That is what will bring the peace and friendship that was always intended in Te Tiriti or Waitangi.
After the break, Te Tiriti, the woman who looks after it, and the tribunal who looks out for it. Just before Christmas, armed with power tools and spray paint, activists took to a display at Te Papa, claiming the English version of Te Tiriti is misleading. Their protest spoke to long-standing concerns around the differences in translations.
It's representing the idea that you have an English text and a Maori text, and they are of equal status, and even perhaps that they say the same things. I don't think they are of equal status.
Interpreting and reconciling the Maori and English articles is part of the Waitangi Tribunal's remit. Established in 1975 by Matu Rata and the Labour government, the tribunal is a standing commission of inquiry into alleged breaches of the principles of the treaty by the Crown.
The Waitangi Tribunal was put there to take the protest off the streets because it was attracting international attention.
Professor Margaret Mutu, chair of the Iwi Chairs Forum.
And to just hope that Māori protest would just go away.
It was set up as a voice where Māori could express their concerns. They've been the length and breadth of the country. They've even been to Rekohu on the Chathams and heard testimony, heard evidence, not only from Māori but from Crown witnesses, from Pākehā witnesses, from Crown Research Institutes.
Maui Solomon, barrister, lead negotiator for the Moriori Treaty Settlement, spent his life debating Te Tiriti rights and responsibilities at the tribunal, in courtrooms, at the United Nations, even the World Trade Organization.
In many ways, I see the Waitangi Tribunal as the conscience of the nation, because it's a compilation of our stories, of how our nation was established.
It has actually reminded the country of what its true history is, and then tried to guide government after government in how to fix up what was wrong.
But now the Crown's wanting to sort of eviscerate the tribunal. And I think why? Because the tribunal only has powers of recommendation. It can't bind the Crown to anything.
For over 50 years, the tribunal, judiciary and parliament have developed and relied upon a set of treaty principles to guide the Crown to address breaches and obligations. Many Māori believe those principles get in the way of the mana motu hake guaranteed by the actual articles. But now, even those principles are under threat.
If there's a bill or an act that says this is what the principles now mean, what are the actual implications of that?
I just think it's not a path that this government needs to be going down or should be going down. And from the leaked paper that came out of Seymour's office or Department of Justice about what the principles he's proposing, they bear no resemblance to the Treaty of Waitangi at all. They're an invention of Mr Seymour's mind about Article 2 promised tino rangatiratanga to all citizens. It did not. Article 2 of the treaty promised tino rangatiratanga to all, everybody, is actually, it's a nonsense because it was a treaty between two sovereign nations, Queen Victoria on the one hand and the chiefs and tribes of Aotearoa on the other.
ACT want to replace the existing principles with their bill. New Zealand First want to review all existing laws, except those relating to treaty settlements, and replace any references to the principles with specific words. New Zealand First also wants to review the role of the Waitangi Tribunal.
I just fear that we're in the grip of an iwi treaty mania. We're doing nothing to change the essence of the treaty. The principles of the treaty is an expression that came into the law in 1975. It's organic, and we want to ensure that the Waitangi Tribunal and its mandate does not steer the treaty in an area where it creates further polarisation and divisiveness.
There's been criticism that the tribunal has expanded its brief. It's gone beyond the historical land iwi injustices.
They're actually fulfilling their brief because the tribunal's powers are to investigate any breach by the Crown under the Treaty of Waitangi.
Its job is far from complete. It has gone round and had a look at specific claims in specific rohe, particular geographic areas, but there are still fundamental systemic matters that must be addressed. The most important, as far as I'm concerned, is the constitutional one.
Since the coalition government was formed, dozens of claims have been filed in the tribunal. An urgent inquiry has been approved over te reo.
Te ranga auwea ngai te rangi, mō te apōpō mō ngai Māori I raro I te kāwanatanga hou.
Ngai te rangi claim a violation of Article 2, the Māori Language Act and Bill of Rights.
It's a real concern, I think, to Māori to hear noises from this government that they're looking at backtracking on use of te reo within government departments and things like that. That's a huge backward step. And particularly as a lawyer and someone who's been involved in fighting for recognition of the reo and treaty rights and responsibilities over the last 30 years, it's really disappointing.
Their attempts to belittle the reo, to reduce its status, to almost an add-on if they feel like it.
A bit like Te Tiriti itself. Anahera Morehu is the chief archivist of this precious taonga, which spent much of its early life relegated to a basement.
And when they raised it from where it was held, it had been eaten by rats or other vermin and brought back to life by being exhibited in the Constitution Room that used to be held in 10 Mulgrave Street. So it's not the best.
So the fact that it was stuck in a basement, what does that tell us?
It could tell us many things that people actually didn't recognise or didn't understand what that document was, or the documents I should say, because there are 9 in total, 7 in paper and 2 in parchment, and of course 8 in te reo and 1 in English.
And adding insult to injury,
in 1877 you had Chief Justice Prendergast declare the treaty as a simple nullity. So then it was literally sat in the archives being eaten by rats for the next 100 years. So then Māori raised protests, we got the Waitangi Tribunal, and it's done a great job up to this point.
After the break, activism, a look back and moving forward.
When it comes time to see where this is going to go into legislation, you and your shitty ass bill are going down the toilet.
No introduction required. Hone Harawira and his whānau have been at the forefront of Waitangi protests for decades.
Have you ever been arrested? Yeah.
Many times, many times. I think about 30 different charges, but only one conviction. And as it happened, it was for something I didn't do.
I was there in the mid-90s when protests over a proposed fiscal cap on treaty settlements ended up with Hone throwing a punch at Sir Wera Gardner.
We ended up becoming really good friends, and I even got to speak at his memorial service.
Lovely, yeah.
That was wonderful.
I know.
Really enjoyed that.
Hey, so what's it like being up here without your mum too? I was thinking that she was so integral to it, eh?
Yeah, I was thinking about that last night actually. Yeah, it's I don't know, whenever Waitangi comes around, we always think about where is mum staying and where are the kids going to be able to know Mama says this, Mama says go do that, Mama this, Mama that. Well, Mama's not here anymore, eh?
So given the messaging at Ratana and at Waitangi, how optimistic are you feeling as we head into 2024?
I'm also optimistic in that the King put out the call and the major drive that came out of that was kotahitanga. That was repeated at Ratana and picked up again at Waitangi. Yes, to challenge the Crown. Yes, to have high demands of what we expect from the Crown, but to have even higher demands of ourselves. That if we are to build kotahitanga, it may mean, gritting our teeth when it comes to some of the iwi stuff and accepting that the Māori thing is bigger than who we are individually as iwi. And that none of us are free until all of us are free.
National government's all about economy and act and all that.
Absolutely.
So how do you deal with that so you don't get swept into that whole Western idea of economy and then everything else gets ditched along the way?
I think that's the problem. I think they focus just on the economy and they don't care who falls out. We have to change that narrative within our own iwi structures and recognise that the corporate juggernaut that the Westerners built is not necessarily the best Indigenous model or the model most suited for us as Māori. But I think the other kind of energy that we should be giving most of our time to is internally. How are we looking after ourselves? How are we looking after our te pani me te rawa kore, rather than just say our job is to build an economic empire, it's the government's job to look after social welfare. Well, it's not. They are our people, and we must do our best to ensure that we bring them to at least zero so that they can participate in everything that we want for our people's future.
Waitangi has always been about whanaungatanga. But sometimes whānau have to dig deep.
Today I've heard people say that we are spiders on this side, that we are sandflies. Well, I'm sorry to say, folks, not even Donald Trump is calling his opponents insects yet.
You'd be related to a bunch of them too.
Yeah. David Seymour, Shane and Winston, but still, we all have our albatrosses to be. No, but I love my relations. I disagree with them, but national MPs, Labour MPs, I've always tried to get on with them, and for them to know that although I'm heavily critical of the things they do as a party, it doesn't affect the personal relationship I may have with them individually.
People like David Seymour don't really have a good fundamental understanding of Te Tiriti o Waitangi because it hasn't been part of our country's education system. So generations of Kiwis have been brought up knowing nothing about their own history. When I look at myself as a young boy at Temuka High School, I learnt about the French Revolution, I learnt about the Garibaldi, I learnt about, all of these histories from other nations, nothing about my own history. And so I'm not surprised that this country's currently where we're at. But that's not the fault of Māori, because the treaty has always had relevance. It's always been debated on the marae.
Looking around the treaty grounds and hearing the kōrero, it left many feeling unsettled. So what then of the state of the nation? How are we tracking?
If I had the opportunity to make a State of the Nation address, it would be to us and us alone. And to say to us, these are the things that we need to do. If they can help in where we're going, or they try to hinder us in where they're going, that's their thinking. But for us to be successful in every facet of our lives, for every whānau in our lives, then these are the things that we need to start thinking about. Lifting te pani me te rawa kore. Feeding our children, e mihi atu ki te kāwanatanga o leipa. Nā rātou i whāngai hi ai wā tātou tamariki.
The State of the Nation speeches I've heard of are a big backward step. I mean, trying to take our country back to where we were 30 or 40 years ago. And we really need to be future looking and really embracing te reo and embracing Te Tiriti as points of difference for our country.
To always go back to he hakaputanga and Te Tiriti, but within Te Tiriti, to always remember that that is a treaty of peace and friendship, and that in order to grow that friendship, you must be able to speak each other's language in order to understand each other properly. And if we can do that, we would have a great country where everybody was included, nobody was marginalised, and where racism didn't exist. And that would be my dream.
If you want to have a battle of ideas, then it helps to come armed for that battle.
To have the audacity to go and develop a bill that has 3 clauses in it in te reo Māori that don't make sense, and you suggest that you're not rewriting or doing away with the treaty? Lies. Lies. Your lies will be exposed. You're not off the hook, Prime Minister.
The Chief Executive of the Waitangi National Trust took the mic.
Well, in summary, I would say we've still got a long way to go.
Tautoko. Speeches often capture the headlines at Waitangi. It's easy to miss the big picture and the fact that amid fierce and ongoing determination to uphold the mana of he whakaputunga and te tiriti, there is whanaungatanga, kai, kids, plenty of smiles, invigorating kōrero. For many of us, Waitangi this year was a reaffirmation. It represented hope and unity, just what we need as we move into 2024.
Feeling amped. Now, wasn't that interesting how positive some of our people are? Tonight we heard from Māori. We heard Māori voices, Māori concerns, and they're pretty much representative of the feeling and the kōrero within Te Ao Māori. But what about other New Zealanders? What about Pākehā, conservative ones? What about Tiriti activists and immigrant voices? Next week we bring you a companion piece. Now don't forget you can find us on Māori Plus across Facebook, YouTube, TikTok and Instagram. Hei tērā wiki e te whānau.